Welcome everybody to this Power BI introduction course. So this is session 1. What we'll be covering today, I'll show my PowerPoint. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself, and then we'll go through the course outline for this whole session and then start working. So I've been working with data since 2001 when I graduated with a business degree. So I worked with many private industries and delivered lots of reports and dashboards and forecasting analysis. I worked mainly with Access, Excel, and some Visual Basic. So VBA was used to automate reports. Then I started discovering teaching and training. So I did that as of 2013. I taught lots of business skills, mainly about the purpose of dashboards and how to manage a business using goals and targets and tracking your outcomes with some dashboards or different reports. And then I heard of Power BI, which was launched in 2016. This is such an amazing, powerful tool that actually gives you all the power of Access, Excel, and VBA, enabling you to build automated reports and dashboards that will get updated automatically, and combining large databases to get your insights on data. So I've been doing this since 2018, and I launched my own business, focusing mainly on training, but also delivering some consulting services as an analyst. So building and creating the Power BI reports and dashboards for my customers who sometimes don't have the time to build it and create it themselves. I'd like to try and take maybe a 5-minute to tour the group. So I'll unmute you and I'll go in alphabetical order of your first name. I'll stop the recording for that. So, not that yet. So thank you for introducing yourselves. Now, what is this course about? Today in session 1, we're gonna explore this Power BI and understand this Power BI as a global solution, which has been launched by Microsoft. And we'll focus on one part of the solution, the Power BI desktop. So you were asked to download this software. We don't use software too much anymore. We call it an app. So you should all have the Power BI desktop app on your computer. So we'll start working with it. We'll cover 2 concepts, either when you receive a report that was built in it. So how can you interact with it? Because those reports are not meant to be printed. They're meant to be read online digitally. So, and you can interact with them. And then we'll start building first charts right away today. And we've built this course that you've received the whole package of content, and in there you have some homeworks. It should be just like a 15-minute, and maybe I could say after half an hour you can stop struggling and wait for the resolution on next session. But yeah, so just to have you take another 15 minutes after the session, prior to session 2, so that you can validate your understanding of what was covered in the previous session. Session 2 is going to be really about building a report. So importing more than one source of information and putting that in relationship and making charts and tables with that. You'll also have a small take home. And number 3, session 3, we'll get into more advanced, just a touch on more advanced functionalities that I think can be useful to you. and also we'll review the whole point of this report. The whole point of Power BI is that you work hard once to build a report, but afterwards, when you want to get an update, it just takes seconds to refresh your report and get updated insights on the new data that's been made available. So that's what it's gonna look like. So I'm gonna start. I also want to introduce everything that was sent out to you. So a zip file was sent out. Hopefully you've opened it. So I'm gonna zoom. I sent out a zip file. You know when it's a zip folder because there's a little zipper on the icon. So you should have received course files and hopefully you downloaded it. And what needs to be done is extract all. And once you do that, you get the folder course files without the zipper. And that's where you can access the content. And today is session 1. So you have a participant handout. So hopefully maybe you've printed it out and so you can take notes on it. So I'm gonna open the participant handout. So the participant handout has lots of web links in it. Okay, so it's documentation that you can refer yourself to later on. There's loads of documentation about Power BI online. So really there's, because you don't become a master BI pro in a day, just as I ask you in Excel. So I'm sure all of you have used Excel, yet most of you haven't used the VLOOKUP or pivot tables. That's because there's so many functionalities, so many possibilities, which with each software, and it's the same with Power BI. So you won't become experts at the end of this training, but I want you to be confident beginners. So that's my learning outcome and objective for this course. I want you to be confident beginners that to dare use the tool and also to refer yourself to the website. So how does my handout works? There, all the topics that I'll cover, you can take notes if you printed out the documentation on your paper, but also later on, if you access all the web links, you'll be directed to web resources. So for instance, I'll start by explaining the typical workflow for Power BI. So I'll open that web page. So as you click all those links on your handout, it's going to take you to online documentation. And for instance, the first topic is what's Power BI? So actually Power BI is half free and half you need to pay a license. But small organizations like you guys can really get all the power of it by only using the free version. Okay, but I want to take 5 minutes for you to understand what's this Power BI thing as a whole. So there's actually 3 parts of the Power BI. So there's Power BI desktop. So you see here an image of 3 screens. So there's the Power BI desktop, and that's what we're gonna learn to use. This allows you to build report, and if you save it as a file, just like you would save an Excel file and send it to somebody, well, that person needs to have Excel to open the report. So if you build it in Power BI desktop, you save it. When you share it to other people, they need to download the Power BI desktop, like you should have done before this course, and then they can open the file. So that's the app where we'll be mainly working in. I want you to know that there's another portion, the Power BI service. So that is a web interface. And the main goal of that Power BI service is to share your report within your organization. So big organizations will choose to go all the way with Power BI. They'll purchase licenses for their employees, and then all the reports that are being created in the first part, Power BI Desktop, once they're created, you don't exchange the Power BI file. The reports and dashboards are uploaded to this web interface, and then each report is tagged with who can have access to it. So then different employees in the organization, they simply connect themselves to this secured Power BI service website, and then they have access to the reports to which they should have access and to which they're allowed to see the information. So for large organization, there's really a gain in productivity to making sure who has access to which data. And also for organizations that are very dynamic and that needs to track the evolution of numbers daily or even every hour during the day. And once the information is uploaded on the Power BI service, it's a web interface. Well, you can guess that it's easily available on a phone or a tablet. So employees on the road can easily grab their phone and see different metrics that are getting updated hourly, daily, or whatever periods. So that's the Power BI as a whole. So I wanted you to know that it exists, that for you to share on the Power BI service and then have your reports on your phone, and then you can even add alerts. So if a number reaches a certain value, you get a ding. Okay, so people can go wild with this. So to get those functionalities, you need to purchase licensing. So if you don't, well, yet you'll get an amazing power from the solution yet, only using the Power BI Desktop, and that's what we'll be exploring. So furthermore, from your handout, you should have, I added the links. So if ever you had not downloaded the Power BI Desktop, I invite you to do so for session 2. And whether you download it using the link from Microsoft Store or going on the website and downloading the app, you'll have a different icon. So you can see that you can have either an icon that has a blue outline or simply the yellow icon. The distinction is that when you get the first one from the Microsoft Store, you'll always have the latest version of Power BI. So Power BI, like there's upgrades every month. Every month there's new functionalities that are being released. So, and your version is going to get updated automatically. If you get the other one, you'll get a prompt saying, hey, maybe you want to update to a newer version. So that's the only difference. Just some vocabulary as we go, before we go further. So I just wanted to compare some terminology between Excel and Power BI. So in Excel, your file is actually called a workbook. So not too many people use that word, but that's just the proper word. So for Power BI, I will often refer to a report. So report is actually the technical word for a Power BI file. But the first thing we'll be exploring is a Power BI report that was built by Janine. And she named that file when she saved it. The title she gave it to was Annual Stats Dashboard. So dashboard is really a new trendy word, meaning aggregated data, getting charts and tables and information of like key performance indicators. That's just like business vocabulary. So, so sometimes people are thinking, oh, I thought I could use Power BI to do dashboards. Yeah, call it whatever you want to call it, but the Power BI file that we'll be saving once we're done and we've built charts and tables, it's a report, okay? But you can call it a dashboard if you prefer. Then your file can have many pages. So those in Excel were sheets. And now in Power BI, it is called a page. So the little tabs at the bottom in Excel where you have sheet 1, sheet 2, you can have multiple pages also in Power BI. And what used to be a pivot table that some of you have used. So a pivot table is you have like column headers, and then sometimes you have line headers, and you have a value in the middle. That's now going to be called a matrix. So I wanted to clarify that. And also just to make things, just to give it a small tweak, there is something called dashboard in the Power BI terminology. And it's a specific functionality that's available only in the Power BI service. So since we're not focusing on the Power BI service in this workshop, you have the link if you want to go and take a look at it. But just, I want you to know later on when you're alone and you search the web and you want to get help as you're building something. Well, you want to get help building a Power BI report. If you search online for Power BI dashboards, you'll be taken to resources that don't apply to you. So just to get the proper vocabulary in. Okay, so that's enough. We're gonna start the hands-on portion. So let's open this file, this Power BI file that I sent out to you guys. So hopefully you have the session 1 folder, and in there's the dashboard. So this dashboard, a PDF version of it was sent out to you maybe last year, and now we're going to look at a falsified version. Okay, so all through this training, I've created Shelter B. Okay, so we are now all employees of Shelter B. So the data that we'll always be using is not real data of any of your shelters. So I took some data and I tweaked it to create fictitious information about Shelter B. So let's take a look at this report. So the only thing we need to do is, just like any other file, we double click on the file and it's going to open up Power BI. So I invite you to open it as we go along. And remember, so if at any point you have issues, I'll try and make pauses so you have time to unmute yourself and then ask a question. And also, Katie has offered to track the chat if you'd rather post a little something in there. So, welcome to Power BI Desktop. Okay, so hopefully you have a full view of everything on my screen. So Power BI, so the report opens in the middle. I have menus at the top and on the right and left sides. And you can see at the bottom, those are my tabs that allows me to go through different pages if this report contains different pages. So what can we do with this? First, just like when you open an Excel file, you are in edit mode. When somebody sends you an Excel file, if it was locked, you cannot change anything in it. But most of the time, people just share the file without adding any protection. So if you click and move things around, well, they're gonna move around. So you just gotta be careful and avoid going on a clicking frenzy. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you easily. If I'm just clicking everywhere, I can grab a chart and by mistake move it, and now it's covering the other chart. So if you're just moving your mouse around and clicking, then you can grab stuff and then move it around. But fortunately, the first button we want to learn is the undo button. So yes, so upper left corner, you have the undo button. So clearly, in most software, that might be your most important button. Also, everything is interactive in this report. Okay, so if I hover a chart, if I click on it, you can see now that my chart is selected. There's a gray line around it, so it's being selected. So then I could edit that chart. But also if I click then on a value, then all charts interact with each other. So that's why also I need to be careful of where I'm clicking, because now it seems like some stuff has disappeared. If I look at my chart at the bottom, I now only have the value for the 2014-2015 fiscal year. That is because in my total turn away chart, I clicked on a 2014 column. So if I click another time on it, then it unselect what it had done. So that's an interesting feature about Power BI, that charts and table can filter each other. And sometimes if I'm seeing a value, I'm wondering how come we have that value, and by filtering my other charts together, I can get new insight. So it's an interesting feature, yet sometimes it's annoying. So when I click, it was not on purpose that I clicked somewhere, then it can be annoying. So if I don't remember where I've clicked, okay, so I've clicked somewhere on a chart and now things are highlighted, but how can I reverse that? I want to stop having things half listed. Well, click somewhere else. Click on a column, a random one in a chart. Now the filtering is being done with that column, and then you click a second time. So try it out. Get on one chart, and when you click on a column, it filters out everything. And when you click a second time, it removes the filtering that was applied everywhere. Some people really love tables. So the first thing we have at the top here is a table of data. This is actually, is that a table or a matrix? This was built as a table. And sometimes we can also have matrix. So tables or matrix, that's the equivalent of a pivot table in Excel. Okay, so I had a list of data, and then I used it to build this summary table. So a table or a matrix is aggregated data, just getting a summary of information from a long list of data. So I had a long list of, so here, this is only for my shelter, but let's say here, the aggregate data. So I had a long list of how many women admitted for each shelter. So each shelter was listed. on my list, and I could see for each year how many women did they admit. Now in this table, I get the sum of all the shelters as one value. So that's something I could have done in Excel with a pivot table, and now we're going to be using tables and matrix to do the same thing. So some people really like to see the numbers in a table format, and other people find added value of charts. The good thing about charts is you can see trend. You can see that here, if I look at 2018 fiscal year, we've had lots of turnaways. Okay, the global for all Alberta is really the highest value, having all those values together. But sometimes now, so here the values were added on each columns, but sometimes some people even like to do charts that don't have any numbers listed. You just see the fluctuation of the columns. But then you're wondering, what's the exact value for that column? So the nice thing about Power BI is when I bring my mouse over a column, there's a black bubble, a little pop-up. That's called a tooltip. So when I get over a chart, over a position in a chart, I get additional information. So you can see here that it's repeating all the information. So it's the 2018 fiscal year. I'm on the purple color, so that's Calgary. And the total turnaway were over 7,000. And what's great about my tooltip is I can add additional information. So in my black bubble for my turnaway chart, I can see how many out of that 7,000, how many were women and how many were children. So that information is not displayed in the chart, but it is available as added information in my tooltip. My black bubble is a tooltip. Furthermore, sometimes when I'm looking at a report, or even if I'm having a meeting and we're discussing the information in this report, I can spotlight or focus on a specific chart. So I'll show you those two buttons, and then I'll give you a minute for you to experiment there. So when I get close to a chart, so I'm getting close to my turnaway chart. When I get close to a chart, there's now 3 dots in the upper corner. So going there, I have the spotlight option. So this is simply adding like a white filter over the rest of my page and bringing this chart as first level of visibility. So if I'm in a meeting and we're all looking at our large screen and we're discussing this chart, it's interesting to put it in spotlight so that our eyes are not disturbed by everything else on the page. Furthermore, beside the 3 points in the upper corner, I can even go in focus mode. So focus mode, that's the only thing now we're seeing on the page. So depending if your chart is very busy, then it allows you to have a better view. Now you can see in the upper left corner, back to report button. So I'll make a pause for you to try it out and see if anybody has a question at that point. Okay, so if you were in focus mode, to come back to this page, you'll need to use the back to report button. So in the upper left corner, you have back to report. I'll take a second to look at the question. So I see the question was somebody had clicked maybe on the table and it was filtering elsewhere. And as I mentioned, what I recommend is clicking simply on another chart. So if you click twice somewhere on another chart, it's gonna do a filtering and undo a filtering from that chart, and that would solve the issue. Anyone else has a question? Okay. So being on that page, you see in the middle something called fiscal year. So this allows you to filter the information. So let's say this is quite interesting that I have information from 2014 till 2018, but I'd like to see only the evolution and compare those 2 years. Just the first one, 2014, and then the 2018. So I can select in my, that's what we call the slicer. I can select 2014, and now there's only that information that is being displayed everywhere. And on my computer, I find the control key, which is usually bottom left of your keyboard. And when you hold control key, you can select a second line. So now everywhere I see only those 2 years being displayed. So that's what I meant by interacting with your reports. So this is good, but on the downside, you need to remember that you've been clicking some places. Okay, so I'm encouraging you to look at those reports on a screen, but if you like to print them out, if you print it now, well, it will only, the printout will only have 2014 and 2018 on it. So here it is very obvious that it's that information. But if we look at the column total, the line total on my table at the top, if you had only those values being displayed, somebody could wonder, what's that number? Like, that's not a 1 year value, that's not a 4 year value. So depending if your tables or charts have the time information being displayed, if you've been filtering, sometimes it could be confusing. So I'll remove those filters. So to remove, simply make another selection and make sure that everything is unchecked. So when that's called a slicer. So when everything has been unchecked, I'm back to the original form of my report. Additional functionalities. Sorting. So let's say here, I said that just by looking at the graph quickly, I could see that the total turnaways for the whole province have been, the biggest values were in 2018. But, sorry, to validate that information, I could change the sorting order of that chart. So here on the chart, I find it easy to see that I guess those years had the most total turnaways. But I could also change the sort. So let's take a look at this. So on my chart, if I click in the 3 dots in the upper corner, I have lots of functionalities, and a few that I have is changing the sorting order. So what I'll do, not only changing the sorting order, but sorted by what? So if I go to my last selection for that menu, I can change it to total turnaways. And now it is sorted ascending. If I go back on my 3 dots, I can validate that it is still ascending, but now sorting by total turnaways, which is now in bold. which leads me to believe that 2018 is the year that we had the most turnaways for the whole province. And prior to that, the other worst year was 2014. So comparing all the years here, it might have not been obvious just to see which year had the most turnaways, but changing the sort order allows us to see that. So if you've been clicking with me, let's try and put it back in chronological sorting order. So upper right corner on the 3 dots, you can change the sort by fiscal year. So that's for charts. What's interesting about tables is you can change the sorting order by simply clicking on your column headers. So without clicking, when you get close to your column headers, you'll see a small triangle appearing. Okay, so for example, in your shelter data, if I click on my women capacity turnaways, now if I take my mouse further away from the table, the little triangle is always appearing. We could call this an arrow pointing down. So by default, it's sorted descending order. So now I can see that the year that I had turned away the most women for capacity reason was in 2017. So that's about sorting in a table. And I could even sort, like do multiple sort. See, an interesting thing we'll experiment. My next 2 values for women turnaways are both 38. So if I look then to the side at children, I have 39 and 59. So I can sort by woman capacity, and then on my keyboard, if you hold the shift key, so the shift key, I hold it down and then I click on children. So now it is both sorted by women turnaways and then by children turnaways. Because you can see here, previously 39 was listed prior to 59. So it is still, my first sorting is on women and then on children. And if I want to bring it back fiscal, sorted by fiscal year, I simply click once on fiscal year and then it's sorted chronologically. Hope everything's going okay. Nothing new in the chat. My charts can actually be 2 charts. So let's take a look again at our turnaway chart. So total turnaways capacity. So I'll bring this chart in focus mode. So I'd like to only see this chart, a big format of it. So when I'm close to it, there's a little icon. Maybe I haven't been zooming too much, sorry for that. So in the upper right corner, I can get in focus mode. So I'll get a large view of this chart. So this chart, there's actually another chart behind it. It's not behind it, it's included in it. How do I know that? Well, in the upper right corner, when I'm close to the chart, there are arrows. So let's explore that. So I have 2 parallel arrows. So when I click on this, I now have new groupings. So this is still my count of turnaways per capacity, turnaways for capacity reason. But now, instead of having years at the bottom, I have emergency, second stage, and seniors. So now the information is aggregated, not only depending on the geographical area, but also very important information. What type of shelter is it? So how to get back to the initial chart look, I'm going to use the upward arrow in the upper right corner. Oops, sorry. Well, yeah, I'm not on the right button. Okay. So using the upward arrow, I get back to the original chart look. Let's understand what data we were seeing. See here, I have 5 years of information, and let's take a look at Calgary. Okay, we can say that it's like let's say it's an average of 7,000 a year. Okay, some years are below, but some years are over 7,000 for Calgary for the 4 years. When I go in the other view, see here, 28,000 and 4,000, and then another few hundreds. So actually this information that I'm seeing here, it's for all 5 years. So maybe it's not really pertinent information for me to see like the whole turnaways for 5 years. So let's use the other arrow. So using the upper arrow to make sure we're at the first level of the chart. And now let's use the arrow that it's one arrow which splits in two. And now I have a new chart with a double level of details. So see, the first groupings, this is almost 2014 information, and now it is grouped for emergency, second stage, and senior. And now this is information that maybe make more sense to me, rather than seeing an aggregated value for the 5 years together. So much possibilities, and so much, a few functionalities for you to take the most of a report that is being shared with you. I'm going to go back to report view. And see now, I left it this way. Now this chart cannot be looked at in this size. Like you really need to go in focus mode to see something out of it. So I'm going to click on the upward arrow to drill up. So what we've learned is that if you click everywhere, you might find it annoying because you're filtering and maybe you don't want to. When you get close to a chart, over a column, let's say, or a different position, there's the tooltip, the black bubble, which is going to give you sometimes additional information. If you're over a chart and you see those arrows in the top, this means that you can get other axes. The same information can be displayed using other axes. On a page, you can have slicers, which will allow you to filter the information. You could change the sorting order. So either using the 3 dots to change what it is sorted by, ascending, descending. And when it's tables of information, simply by clicking on the column headers, you're going to be changing the sort. How about if ever you still want to print? When you print, there's no print button, okay? So actually, I went maybe quickly on that one. So you're gonna be going on the File menu, and then you'll choose Export. So you need to export as a PDF, and then you'll be able to print out your PDF. So that's it. You just gotta live with it. So that's about printing. Let's take a look at the second page. So to navigate from the different pages in the report, well, you simply click at the bottom. So there's a second page about comparison averages. So when I click on it, it's going to display me a new page of information. So I'm not going into too much details of understanding what this report is about. I'm focusing more on learning functionalities and how to click. So the same things are there. If I get close to a chart, I'm gonna have more information. And you can see this chart. So I'm bringing my mouse over the top left chart, and there's no arrows. There's not all the arrows that we saw previously. So there's this, when this chart was built, it was not prepared in a way that you could filter it by other axes. Okay, the only possible axis is our fiscal year axis. The person that created it did not add other possibilities, so that's why I don't have the arrows anymore to drill down to another level. I still have slicers, so things at the bottom that allows me to filter. So selections have been made. So I received this report and there were already selections made. Why is that? Well, shelter B is we are shelter B. It's an emergency shelter and we are in a rural area. So it makes sense that currently, if I look at my chart, it is comparing my number of turnaways. So light green is your shelter average. So this is my numbers that we got for shelter B. And I'm comparing with the average for all the emergency shelters in rural areas and smaller towns. So that's how the darker green values are set. So if we are to experiment, let's remember that our value for 2014 is 77. Okay, so if I remember that my value here is 77, when I'll change at the bottom my filtering, if I change on Calgary, well, in Calgary, the shelters are much larger than me. So on average, for that whole year, the Calgary shelters had over 3,000 turnaways. Well, my 77 value is still there. Okay, so this is how this page was built, that by making selections at the bottom, it changes with whom am I comparing myself with. So it doesn't really make sense to compare myself with Calgary. Just wanted you to see how the report is behaving. So I'll click back on smaller town and rural areas, and now I can compare myself to the others, which are similar size shelters to me. So one last thing I want to show you, because maybe it's happening to you and you're wondering, what is it? I'm going to open a new page just because our pages are already full. So at the bottom, I have this bright yellow button. Okay. So I'm still somebody reading the report, but there's information that I'm wondering if I can find more information. Okay, so maybe it happened to you earlier. As I said, don't avoid clicking frenzy. But if you've double clicked somewhere on the white, you got this this pop-up. Ask a question about your data. Okay, so we've learned the undo button. Oh, I don't want to see that thing. Okay, I can get rid of it. Undo. But what about, I'll double click. What about you're wondering what that is and you want to explore it? Okay, I just grabbed it by the corner to stretch it and make it bigger. So you're receiving a report, and actually you can try and ask questions. Okay, so the report creator chose to create those tables and those charts, but maybe there's additional information you'd like to know about. So without knowing how to build or create anything in Power BI, you can try and type a question. Though it is a computer, so to some extent you need to speak the computer language. So just before we start typing our question, I'll give you a tour of other menus in the Power BI desktop application. And then once we've seen everything, we'll try and ask a question. Okay, because here I cannot ask a question about what is my employee average income. Okay, because your employee wage or is not the information is not in this report. Okay, so you can ask questions about information that is in the report. It's not a random question that you can pop up in the air. You cannot ask what's the weather for tomorrow. It won't give you anything. So what type of question could we ask? Well, I'm going to show you a little more how this report was built and what's available in it. So then we can ask a question. So what do we have in Power BI? The upper menu, it's really about building. And soon we'll start building something. We'll start using those buttons, but we'll really be covering that in the next sessions. Then here on the side, maybe you guys had the filters menu open all along. So that's if you want to apply more filters. So we'll be checking this later on. And with the arrows, you can expand and collapse. Then on the right, you have a pane for visualizations. So we'll be using this when we build a chart or a table. We'll be selecting from the options here and then doing formatting and choosing what kind of information, what values do we want to display in the chart. It's all going to be happening in this column here. Fields, what's that? Well, it's the information, the list of data that was uploaded to the report. So we uploaded a big list of information about all our shelters, and then the same matrix, but only for us. So then, also using a list of dates, we were able to compare in tables or charts, compare our shelter with aggregate value for the whole province. Here, if I click on an arrow, so I'm in the fields column. If I click on the arrow, what it's showing to me here is all the columns available with aggregate data. So that's a new mindset that you need to have, that we're gonna work with column headers. So wait a second, it's probably not clear at this point. What's that data? Okay, I want to see the data, the details. Okay, well, I have that view. I go completely to the left side. So currently, it's not too easy to see, but there's a tiny yellow line. Okay, I'm currently in a report view. So I'm seeing only my charts and table. But if I go to the other level, data, I'm going to click on that. And now I see my detailed information. Okay, so this can be an extract from Outcome Tracker or an Excel file that somebody prepared, but it's detailed information, a detailed list that's been uploaded. And now I'm going to make calculation on that data. So you can see here, if I look at the different rows, so when I click on data view, you can see that I still have the fields column on the right side, and the first table, aggregate stats, is highlighted in gray. This means that this is currently the table of information about aggregate stats that I'm viewing. And then all the columns, I can move the bar at the bottom, and you can see that there's loads of columns that were loaded of information. So we have a few charts, but we didn't use all the information. Okay. Actually, when this is an Excel file that was built, aggregating the information from each shelter. And when it was all uploaded to the report, to keep anonymity on different values for each shelter, the column with the shelter name has been removed. So you can go slowly and take a look everywhere, and there's never a name of a shelter mentioned. But actually, each line is the information for a different shelter. So the first one, in 2000, there would be a name of a shelter, and then these are the values for that year for that shelter. And then each line is a different shelter. What if I look at the other table? So completely on the right side, if I click on shelter specific, I can see only the information for my shelter B. So you can see now that there's only one line for each fiscal year, okay? Because now this is only the information for my shelter. So this information was brought in the report so that I can compare myself with average values of the province. This is just a quick tour, but I wanted to show you what's in the background. So we saw only the charts and tables, but how were these built? Well, it started out by having a huge Excel file with lots of information in it. So probably like me, when you clicked on shelter specific on the side, it expanded the table. So if you click again, it's gonna collapse all the details, and then we can take a look at years. So year, that was a tiny table of information that we uploaded. It was again an Excel file that had all the year listed. So lastly, let's take a look at the other view that we have. So at the top, we can see our report. Then we can see the detailed data that's behind the scene. And what about model? So model, again, this is something to get used to in Power BI, is the big file of data that I upload to make my report. I'm often going to be looking at it by, it has a name, aggregate stats, and then I see all the column headers. And now, arrows all of that, we'll keep that for next Monday, okay? But you can see here that things are tied together, okay? Those are relationships, so we'll be learning about those. So I wanted to take a tour of what was uploaded. Now we've seen like everything that's that is imported in that file, and it just caught my attention that there's some information about Aboriginal women. Okay, so all the tables we saw were about calls and turnaways, but I have some information available about Aboriginal women that's available back in the back end, but there were no charts about it. So I'm going to go back to report view. So on the left side, I'll click on the report icon. And now I'm going to use this nice functionality about asking a question. So as I mentioned, it works a little if you know how to go about it. So maybe I invite you maybe to just take a look at my demo rather than try on your own, but you can also try. So I'd like to know how many Aboriginal women. So the total. I'm gonna start typing total. I'm gonna zoom. So as I start typing, it gives me suggestions. Total Aboriginal. So I'm not even done typing the whole word about Aboriginal. And then it's asking me, so do you want the total from the aggregate stats table, where I have the information for the whole province, or the other file, the other table of data where it's only your shelter specific information? That's the one that I'm interested about. And I'm interested about how many Aboriginal women were admitted to my shelter. So I can select that suggestion that was made to me. And now it's giving me a huge number. I mean, what's that number? I'm not admitting 2,000 people a year. Oh, so that might be the issue. So then I'm gonna add per year. And now it's asking me, what year column should we use? Okay, so if you're not certain and you're a beginner, how about keeping yourself with your shelter specific? I'm only interested in information about my shelter. Oh, I don't like that. What's that? It's not years. It's numbers. Okay. So I'll remove that. I'll type year again. Okay, what about this? Year, fiscal year. So now I'm getting my number per year. 167 per year. That makes more sense. Okay. What's that? The years are in a wacky order. So at the end, I'll add the word sorted. And now it's sorted in alphabetical, chronological order. Okay. So when you double click on your page, you'll get this pop-up, ask a question. Okay, that's gonna appear all the time. If you just want to get rid of it, just do undo, and that pop-up will disappear. If you want to experiment with it, go on. But I'll also show you, if I want to have a chart showing me the Aboriginal women admitted per year, I'll just show you how to build it directly. Okay, rather than using this functionality, because you need to know how to use the proper wording. Like I started with total, and then I said sorted. So it's just keywords that you might not know of. But if you get there and it works, and that's the information you want to see in a chart, there's this nice icon. So at the end of your Q&A box, clicking on that, and now it's not a Q&A box anymore, it is a chart that's been added on page 3.
Julie, it's Katie here. I'm just, there's a question from Marge in the chat box. And so she was asking, can you lock the data in the background? So Marge, if you want, maybe want to unmute and talk a little bit more about your question, or Julie?
I can attempt an answer.
Okay.
So yes, it is lock. So a big distinction with Excel, and we're going to start building something, and you'll see when I go to data view and I see those files, and here is just the easy one, the one about here, I cannot edit anything here. I can see it for me to refer myself to it, but there's no way for me to be able to transform or corrupt this data. It's just for me to see it. So when you share this report to people, they cannot edit in any way the data that's here in the background. But the file, I mean, if this was saved on a shared server, and you share it to somebody, and then somebody just whacks everything around and do save, well, yes, they've screwed up your design. So the report view is in edit mode. So maybe make sure if you share those just by saving them on a shared directory, that if people move or even delete your charts and then do save, well, it's going to be saved. Okay, but in the background, the data that was uploaded, it cannot be transformed here. Is that good?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. So how about we build something from scratch? Okay. I'll have you build this. Okay, and I bet we have enough of a half hour to do so. Okay, so I'm gonna get you started on building your first Power BI report. How can we do that? So let's get a new blank file. So if you go on File and New, so upper left corner, File and New, or if you've just been watching and you're now therefore enough to start clicking, simply launch your Power BI app. So if you have this menu bar at the bottom like me, just type Power BI, and then you can launch your Power BI desktop. So I'm gonna get a new file. So when you open up Power BI, or when you open up a blank new file, you always get this prompt in the middle, and you can simply click on the X symbol. So in the upper right corner. So I have a pro license. I pay to have the whole Power BI package. So that's why I can be logged in. But for yourself, just do the X and ta-da! You're simply using the free Power BI desktop. So I have a file. If some of you are now using Office 365, you are now used to having your files saved by magic all the time. Okay, there's new functionalities in Words, Excel, that your file is always getting saved. It does not happen here in Power BI. In the last 2 years, I didn't have my Power BI crash on me. It's a very stable software, yet you need to remember from time to time to save. So first thing first, our blank file is just doing the upper left corner a save. And you can save it somewhere. I'm going to save it in my session 1 folder. And I'm going to call it created during training. Okay, so it is saved. So if I want to build a table or a chart, I'll need some data. So just wait a second. I sent you in the session 1 folder, there's a data folder, okay? You can just look at my demonstration for the moment. So this data folder contains a file. I'll just open it for you to know. So to refer to the previous question, this file here, if I open it, and then if I change the information in it, well, I can do so. Okay, this is a CSV file. This is the extract that I get from Outcome Tracker. Okay, you can see that I've transformed the extract. I've named shelter B everywhere. But if you go to your Outcome Tracker and you get the call contact report, this is the report you're going to be getting. Okay, it's the same columns that you'll be getting. So I downloaded one. I prepared one for you, and I recommend that's the one that we all use today. Okay, so prior to building your report, obviously you need to have data. Okay, so we did that. We went to Outcome Tracker, downloaded a call contact report, and it is saved in session 1 data file. It's saved somewhere. Cool. Now let's come back to Power BI. My Power BI file here, I need to import that data in it. Once it's imported, I cannot transform it. I can, we'll see later. my users cannot transform it. So, hey, first button, really need to learn that one. Okay, get data. That is the first step. So let's click on it. And it's asking you what type. Okay, so here, further down the list, I'm bringing in a CSV file. Okay, so you need to specify the proper type of file that you're bringing in. And now I'm getting a document browser. Why is that so big? And now I need to find my session 1 folder to find my, so it's in course files, session 1 data, and I can find my extract from my database call contact report. So I select it and I say enter. So now I see a sample. Okay, so it's saying me you're about to bring call contact report Q1, and this is what it looks like. Cool, that's what I was expecting. Okay, so at the bottom for today, we'll simply do load. Okay, I just clicked the big load button. Not much has changed. The only thing that has changed is if I look completely to the right, I now have my call contact report. That's the name of my table, because that was the name of the file that I brought in, and now listed in alphabetical order. So that can be useful or sometimes annoying, but my columns are now listed not the way that they are in the report, but in alphabetical order, all my columns. It's my first time. I want to validate what did I bring in. Okay. Well, I just showed you completely to the left. if I click on data view, I'll be able to see this information. So now I'm seeing my whole extract. So the extract, this is actually all the calls that were recorded in outcome tracker. Okay, so you can see the list. It starts January 4. And now, so it's not a Q1 actually. Sorry, it's a Q3 for you guys. So I'm seeing all my calls and how long they lasted and some information about the customer that called me. So let's go back to report. And now I'd like to build a chart. Okay, what do I want? So first target that I'll ask you, first thing we want to build is a nice chart per month. And I want to know how many calls I got. So counting my calls. Okay, and then I'll add some nice detail to it, adding to the legend my different request type. So we have a blank canvas. This is actually called the canvas. And we want to build a chart. So let's make selections on the right. So here, my visualizations menu. So that's where it's going to start. And I'm going to select the second one, my stacked column. And when I click on it, I now have one on my screen. On the left. So still zooming here on visualizations. Once I've selected a chart, it is highlighted, and then below I have now new boxes. I have one for the axis, legend, values, tooltip. So those can be filled with what I have on the right, which is actually the different columns that I have in my table. So to do so, maybe I need to take a glimpse at my data again. So you can hold on and look at what I'm displaying. So I'll go back to data. So what I want to do is count my calls. So maybe I can use this column here, okay, a system ID. So this is just a random number for all for my different customers. So maybe I can count those. And then there was date that maybe I can use to do my months. So I'll focus on those two information. And then I wanted the type of requests. Okay, so further down the list, I have a column called type of requests. And I can see here, I can even look at the drop-down menu. Oh yeah, crisis, information request, residential admission. That's the column I'll be looking for. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I see that there's another one, so I must be careful to pick the right one. Okay. So back to report view. So now I've selected my chart, and now what should I put on the axis? So the axis is going to be time. So fortunate for us, Power BI is quite sharp. When there's a date, we can see that now there's an arrow beside date. So I can expand date. Oh, then it's listing date hierarchy. If I expand again, it created for me a split of year, quarter, month. So what I can do is simply add a check mark beside month. And Power BI added it to the axis. Okay, and then we said that I would be using system ID. So I go down my alphabetical list, and then I find system name ID, and I can add a check mark also. So Power BI is quite smart. And since we selected time, it thought, you probably want to have this on the axis. Then we selected a second value, and then it thought, maybe we'll put this in the value. So I'll show you later on what to do if it's not in the right position. But now we're happy. We got one chart. Let's validate the values. Okay, this seems like it's all magic. Is this happening properly? Well, if I look, see 100, so it's about over or below 100 for 3 months. So I should have, this means I've had around 300 calls. Okay, that's what I loaded. I loaded information for 3 months. So again, I'll go take a look at my data view where I have my detailed information. So here I have all the rows, and if I look way at the bottom, it tells me that this table has 320 rows. So this makes sense because each row, each line is a call. So by counting my system ID, my system name IDs, I got the proper value. I'm going to go back to report view. So that's good. My chart, when it's highlighted in gray, there's a gray line around it. You can also grab it by corners or by the side, and you can resize. Okay. Remember, when you click in it, it's making selections. You see now when I click on a month, the other columns are in lighter blue. Okay. Good practice. Anytime you want to grab a chart, grab it by the title. So when I'm grabbing it by the title, I can move it around, and it's not making selections or filtering on my page. Okay, I said that I wanted the number of calls and also with the type of requests. So let's come here. So I'll just add that second information, and then I'll look for questions. Okay, so below visualizations, if I go down, we have the month on the axis and my system name ID. Now for legend, this time instead of just adding a check mark, I'll show you that you can drag and drop in the proper position. So I go down at the bottom of my list, I pick the before last, which is type of request, and I hold down my click button and let go of my mouse button when I'm over legend. Okay, so either by simply adding a check mark beside my column headers, or by doing a drag and drop, I can add stuff for my axis, legend, and values. And now maybe I want to resize so that we can see all the words. So we've covered lots of basics. Okay, we did get data. Once we had the data in, we were able to add a chart, and then we selected what we wanted to be displayed in that chart. Formatting is always a necessity. I probably don't like this title, system name ID by month. Okay, I want it to be called number of calls. So what can I do? Well, formatting. Where is formatting happening? It's not by clicking on your chart. Okay, so in Excel, if you've done charts in Excel, you just click on anything, you can format the axis. Here, no. Where's the formatting happening? my chart needs to be selected. And then when I look at my visualizations menu, here there's a tiny yellow line. So I'm currently being able to select the fields that I'm gonna use in the chart. And beside, I have the paintbrush, the paint roller. Let's click on that. And now you have all the menus, all the formatting possibilities. Okay, so let's go down the list, and there's title. So if I expand my title, I can rename it number of calls, and that would be enough. And now my title have changed. And I can go through all those menus and make lots of different formatting, changing the colors, changing like everything. I'll make a pause and take a look at the chat. Okay. How about we make another one? Okay. How about we simply copy that chart? Okay. Click in the white once. My chart is not selected anymore. Click on your chart title. Oh, there's a gray line around it. I see that my chart is selected. Okay. You can simply, I just did a right click and you say copy. And then somewhere in the white, you need to do paste. I always use the shortcut Control V. Okay. And it copied it over. Okay, I've moved them around. So once you did copy, afterwards you do Control V to paste. And now you have the chart. So this one, I don't want the details of my types of requests. Okay, so make sure that it's a second, well, there's only one chart selected. And now from the legend, I'm going to remove type of requests. Okay, and now how about tracking if people were admitted or not? So from legend, I removed type of request by clicking on the X sign. And now instead, I'll drag my first field, admitted. How come do I get 3 colors? It's because when we get all those information calls, we don't tag it whether they're admitted to the program or not admitted. So actually that information is very important to me, and it's properly filled mainly for my residential admission requests. So actually this second chart, I'd like it to be only my residential admission requests. Okay. How can I make it that one chart display only parts of the information that I have in my data? Right? Because the outcome extract called contact report that I brought in has all the calls, and that's valid information. I'd like to track this first chart where I see the distribution between each type of calls. But now the second one, I want to focus on residential admission requests. This is when we were going to start using this filters pane on the side. Okay, so here, filters, there's a first title, filters on this visual. So yes, my chart is selected and I want to filter on this visual. And I can add field. So my type of requests, I'm going to drag and drop to bring it up here. So I grab on the left side the before last type of request, and I bring it to the filters menu. And now it expanded for me all the possibilities, and I can simply select residential admission requests. And now the values are much smaller. You can see here that I have January 35 admitted and 12 not, so that's 47. What about if I look here? In my first chart, my residential admission requests were 47 in January. So I did have 47 calls for residential admission requests, and here I can see the split between admitted and not. I'll need to change my title to make sure that this chart is there's no confusion, okay, because it's not all calls. So remember, if I want to change anything regards to formatting on a chart, it's in my visualization menu on the side. And here, by default, I always see the possible fields to fill out, but I need to go on the paintbrush. So I can change my title and add that it's residential admission requests. Yes, is there a question?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. No, it was like 20. I think it was about $1,800. Thanks. Love you. Bye.
So we have time to make another one. Okay, I'll give you 4 minutes so you try on your own. I'd like to something about call length. Okay, so per month, this time select a line chart. So make sure you position yourself in the white, and then start building a line chart, and you'd like to see the length of calls per month. So is anybody succeeding, or is anybody having an issue? So trying to make this chart a line chart, and I want to use my length of calls per month. So when I start building, so I'm going to go with the solution. When I start building something, always make sure that you're in the white, because if you have a chart selected and you start clicking, then it's going to transform the chart that you were positioned on. Okay. I've had comments in the chat. Yeah, Katie, asking anyone brave enough to share. I'll go on since it's 12:50, since it's 51. So I've clicked in the white of my canvas, probably selected the line chart. And then on my axis, I bring the month. And then on my values, I bring length of call. There's an issue. Length of call over 1,000. So what's happening? Well, there's no magic, okay? Power BI is simply looking at the data you uploaded and making some sort of summarization of that information. So I'll go in data view and take a look at what we have. So we understand each line is a call. And then in my column, length of call, I get how many minutes were each call. So by default, when it's a number, Power BI is thinking, you probably want to do the sum of those values. So these are all numbers. So Power BI is thinking, oh, so with those values, I'll do a sum. But the information I was looking for was, what's my average length of a call? Okay. So when my chart is selected, I see that I have months in it, and my value is length of call. At this level, at the box here, there's a downward facing arrow. And I can expand options. And I see there's a green check mark. By default, for numbers, it's going to do a sum. I'd rather have the average. So I select it. It's now stating average length of call for my visuals values. And now the values have changed. And I have the values that I was looking for. In January, on average, my call lasted 10 minutes. So lots of content today. We've discovered this environment, and we've started a first practice at grab an extract from a database, import here, and then start building visuals. And depending on what's the value, Power BI is going to make assumptions on what to do. Like, should I sum those values? Should I count? Or should I, and that's the first two that it's always going to come up to. The defaults are going to be count or sum. So when you want other stuff, you need to specify it. So somebody, she's not getting the blue line. Well, here, you need to have those selections. So below visualizations, your line chart is selected, and now you see date, and now average length of call. So do you want to unmute yourself, Sadhana? Do you have those two? Oh, you have it now. Cool. Oh, maybe it was not displaying. Yeah. Ha, see? So maybe that's, again, and we're gonna cover that situation about everything interacting together. But see here, by mistake, if I click on one chart, I clicked on January, then I don't have the line anymore. I only have the value for January because everything is interacting. we'll talk some more about maybe getting rid of that issue in another session. So hopefully you've learned a lot and you've enjoyed yourself and you're not too overwhelmed and looking forward for a next session. I strongly encourage you, like you have lots of days ahead of you to complete the take home. So I sent you another file of a call contact report, but for a whole year. So I invite you to repeat the steps. Start with a blank report, upload your file, and try to make this chart. So I guess that'd be it. I don't know, Katie, you have a closing note?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Julie. That was really great. Helped me definitely understand a bit more about what can seem like a pretty overwhelming interface for Power BI for someone that's not a tech person. So as I said previously, this video, this session is recorded. We'll be putting it up and making it available for folks. And I'll try to do that as soon as possible because I know some people got in a little bit late and some people had to leave a little bit early. So I'll try and get that out so you can watch the pieces you missed or kind of refresh on some stuff before the next session. And yeah, if you do have any questions in the interim, I'd say write them down, save them for Julie on Monday. I probably won't be able to help you if it's about Power BI. But if you do have any questions about logistics or anything like that for the Monday or next Friday session, you can connect with me. Okay, and that's everything.
Thank you. So Lori Van E, how to name charts. So changing the title of a chart is under the paintbrush to do format. Naming the chart, I can touch base on that for another session. That's like an Excel functionality. So I'll touch base next session. Thank you, and I'll stop the recording.